Brandon Du Wild, whose full name was Andre Brandon Du Wild, was born on April 9, 1942, in Brooklyn, New York. Growing up in a family deeply involved in the performing arts, he felt a natural pull toward the stage from an early age. His father, Frederick A. Fritz Du Wild, was a talented actor and a seasoned Broadway production stage manager, while his mother, Eugenia Wilson Du Wild, followed her passion as a part-time stage actress. This rich theatrical heritage provided Brandon with a nurturing and creatively stimulating environment, significantly shaping his early interest in acting. The family eventually made their way to Baldwin, Long Island, where Brandon's exposure to theatrical productions and the arts continued to flourish. At just 7 years old, he made a memorable Broadway debut in Carson McCullers' touching play The Member of the Wedding. His portrayal of the sensitive and introspective John Henry West earned him widespread acclaim, making him the youngest recipient of the prestigious Donaldson Award, which honors exceptional talent in theater. The success of The Member of the Wedding on stage soon led to a film adaptation in 1952 directed by the renowned filmmaker Fred Zinnemann. In this cinematic version, Brandon reprised his celebrated role, showcasing his acting skills once again. His performance in the film was so impactful that it earned him a Golden Globe Award for Most Promising Newcomer, marking the start of what would become an impressive career in both film and theater. Brandon's most renowned role emerged in 1953 when he took on the character of Joey Starrett in George Stevens's acclaimed Western film Shane. His heartfelt invocation, "Shane, come back," has become one of the most unforgettable quotes in film history. At just 11 years old, Brandon earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor, making him one of the youngest nominees ever in that category. This performance cemented his reputation as an emerging star in Hollywood. After achieving success in Shane, Brandon transitioned to television, featuring in the ABC sitcom Jamie from 1953 to 1954. The series highlighted his charisma and adaptability, and fans grew even fonder of him. During the 1950s and 1960s, he made appearances in numerous TV shows such as Wagon Train, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and The Virginian, demonstrating his ability to handle a variety of genres. As he matured, Brandon sought roles that mirrored his development as an actor. In 1959, he was cast in Blue Denim, where he played a teenager facing serious challenges, signaling his move toward more adult roles. He continued to broaden his horizons with films like All Fall Down in 1962, where he portrayed the younger sibling of Warren Beatty's character, and HUD in 1963, starring alongside Paul Newman. In HUD, Brandon took on the role of Lonnie Bannon, a young man wrestling with ethical dilemmas, showcasing his emotional depth and acting prowess. Outside of acting, Brandon was deeply passionate about music. He worked alongside his friend and musician Graham Parsons, well known for his contributions to the Byrds and the Flying Burrito Brothers. Brandon aspired to succeed in music, and Parsons's band, the International Submarine Band, supported him during recording sessions. Although these musical endeavors did not achieve mainstream success, they revealed Brandon's diverse artistic interests. Many years later, Parsons co-wrote the song In My Hour of Darkness with Emmylou Harris, with the opening line paying homage to Brandon's untimely death. Brandon Du Wild experienced 2 marriages during his brief yet vibrant life and became a father to a son. His first marriage was to Susan M. Ma, a writer, whom he married in 1963. At that time, Du Wild was just 21 years old and already an esteemed actor with a promising future. Ma, a novelist, resonated with his artistic inclinations and appreciation for the arts. Initially, their relationship was defined by mutual respect and a shared desire for a life filled with artistic expression and emotional depth. Together, they welcomed a son named Jesse Du Wild, adding new significance to Brandon's life. Fatherhood was a significant milestone for Du Wild, and despite the challenges associated with his acting career and the pressures of early fame, he was devoted to being a responsible parent. However, the strain of maintaining a marriage under public scrutiny alongside the unavoidable hurdles faced by 2 young individuals pursuing demanding careers ultimately took its toll. After 6 years, Brandon and Susan divorced in 1969. Despite their separation, they remained committed to co-parenting Jesse and maintained communication through their son. Years later, in the early 1970s, Du Wild fell in love again with Janice Garrow. Janice, a former flight attendant and aspiring actress, brought a new sense of companionship and stability into Brandon's life during a time when he sought both personal and professional renewal. Their relationship quickly progressed, and they got married in April 1972. Friends and family noted that Brandon seemed genuinely happy in the months following their wedding, describing him as more grounded and optimistic about the future. Tragically, their time as a married couple would come to an abrupt end. Just 3 months after their marriage, Brandon Du Wild lost his life in a car crash in Denver, Colorado, at the young age of 30. His early death left his family, friends, and followers heartbroken, bringing to a sudden close a new chapter in his personal life that had only just begun. Despite the brevity of his second marriage, those close to him believed he had found in Janice a partner who truly understood and supported him. In the shimmering light of early 1960s Hollywood, a time when image was paramount and secrets were tightly held behind the studio's velvet curtains, two extraordinary men met in a moment filled with both respect and unspoken attraction. One was Paul Newman, the blue-eyed epitome of American manhood, a rising figure of effortless cool who inherited the rebel legacy from James Dean and Marlon Brando. The other was Brandon Du Wild, the child actor who captured American audiences as the somber wide-eyed Joey and Shane, who had evolved into a strikingly sensitive, introspective young man with creative aspirations and a restless spirit. By the time Du Wild was in his early 20s, he was no longer the tousled-haired boy from the prairie. He had taken on more adult roles, most notably alongside Newman himself in HUD, 1963, where their real-life chemistry was just as complex as the roles they played on screen. Brandon, soft-spoken and emotionally tuned, looked up to Newman with something deeper than mere professional admiration. He was not just impressed with Paul's talent or movie star aura, he was captivated by him. Newman's rugged confidence, his combination of warmth and aloofness, ignited something in Wild that he had never entirely come to terms with. On set, their dynamic was palpable. Newman, then in his late 30s, noticed Brandon's attentiveness, how he lingered between takes watching Paul with quiet reverence. Brandon would ask him questions about acting, about the philosophy of performance, sometimes even about marriage and fidelity, in ways that felt coded and elliptical. Newman, ever the professional, would answer kindly but evasively, perhaps recognizing the undercurrent but choosing not to disturb the surface. What Brandon experienced may have been unclear even to himself. Growing up under the intense scrutiny of child fame and maturing in a time that was unwelcoming to authentic expressions of queerness, he was a young man who wore his vulnerability openly. He frequently appeared to shift between different realms, longing for closeness while dreading exposure, a common struggle for many performers of that era who lived secret lives under the harsh light of celebrity. According to some murmured accounts, never substantiated and always refuted, Brandon once invited Newman to a late-night gathering at his rented bungalow along Sunset Boulevard during a filming break. It was intended to be an intimate affair, but few attendees ever arrived. Whether intentionally or coincidentally, the night eventually ended up featuring just the two of them. Brandon played the guitar with a tender soulful style and offered Paul a drink, likely bourbon, which Newman consumed with his usual moderation. Their conversation turned philosophical, as was typical with Brandon, and he began to share his thoughts on loneliness, fame, and the parts of himself he felt unable to disclose. The moment that occurred next has been subject to endless speculation in private memoirs, in incomplete narratives from industry insiders, and in the unspoken gaps of letters and interviews. Some claim Brandon tentatively brushed against Paul's hand, probing for a response. Others suggest he leaned in too closely, only to pull back, his bravery fading in the charged silence around them. Newman, polite yet unwavering, is said to have gently guided the discussion back to safer topics, opting for compassion instead of conflict. After all, he had been married to Joanne Woodward for a long time, and their relationship was among the most stable in Hollywood, a rarity. For Paul, the moment might have simply been a minor note in a complex friendship. For Brandon, however, it lingered. The emotional gamble he took, however subtle, was both freeing and wounding. In a world that provided him only reflections and facades, he had dared, even if just for a brief time, to be authentic, and although it did not result in the connection he may have envisioned, it solidified a truth within him that longing was not something to be ashamed of. That desire could be beautiful, even when it was unreciprocated. Tragically, Brandon Du Wild's life ended prematurely in 1972 when he died in a car accident at the age of 30. Whatever reality existed between him and Paul Newman perished with him, buried beneath Hollywood's lore. Newman never publicly addressed any such occurrence, and perhaps it never took place. Or maybe it was just one of many intimate, delicate moments that thrive away from public scrutiny, remembered only in fragments, in emotions, in the quiet instances of what could have been. Brandon Du Wild, a talented and charming young actor best recognized for his roles as a child star in films like Shane, led a life that was both highly visible and deeply private. While much of his career unfolded in the public eye, certain aspects of his personal life remained enveloped in mystery, rumors, and whispered tales that only a few close to him might have been aware of. One such narrative, rarely spoken about openly, pertains to his complex connection with the iconic Paul Newman. Amid the dazzling social circles of Hollywood during the 1950s and 60s, when image held immense importance and discretion was vital, it was rumored that Brandon had a profound admiration and potentially more toward Paul Newman. Newman, already an established star and icon of cool sophistication, was both an idol and a source of fascination for the younger actor. According to various reports and insider stories, Brandon did not merely admire Paul from a distance. He actively pursued his attention and affection through subtle yet intentional means. Brandon's attempts to entice Paul involved a careful combination of charm, vulnerability, and youthful boldness. He recognized that Newman possessed a captivating presence, famous for his striking blue eyes, effortless charisma, and an air of unattainable coolness. However, Brandon, with his own remarkable looks and sensitive personality, was not a typical admirer. He understood the impact of understated gestures, quiet signals that could express interest without overt expressions, particularly in a time when such topics were often shrouded in secrecy. One method Brandon used to attract Paul's interest was through engaging conversations centered on their shared passions, acting, art, and the intricacies of fame. Brandon had a talent for making others feel acknowledged and understood. With Paul, he skillfully listened and participated in dialogues that encouraged Newman to reveal his dreams and frustrations. These moments of connection were infused with an unspoken invitation to intimacy that Brandon hoped Paul would perceive. In social gatherings, Brandon would strategically position himself close to Paul, offering a friendly smile or a fleeting touch of the hand. Moments brief but loaded with significance. Occasionally he would deliver subtle compliments in the form of casual remarks praising Paul's recent film, expressing admiration for his charitable work, or making quiet observations about how Paul moved with such effortless elegance. Each phrase was selected with intention, a way of saying, "I notice you," in a world where genuine recognition can be scarce. Brandon's allure extended beyond words. It was also about presence. He would dress with understated sophistication, often wearing outfits that highlighted his youthful appeal without appearing overly done. There was an implicit invitation in the way he carried himself, openness, warmth, and a hint of vulnerability that attracted others. For Brandon, the art of seduction revolved around emotional honesty as much as it did about physical appearance. Yet beneath these efforts lay an awareness shaped by the times. Both men navigated an industry and culture that demanded discretion regarding personal matters. The pressure to uphold a public image often meant that any deeper connection had to remain concealed secret, a hushed possibility rather than an openly acknowledged reality. Brandon's endeavors were tinged with a bittersweet understanding that what he desired might never be fully embraced or reciprocated in public. Nevertheless, those who observed these interactions sensed the quiet yearning behind Brandon's actions. A young man striving for something genuine in a realm of pretense, hoping to close the gap between admiration and love, between camaraderie and something deeper. Whether Paul Newman fully grasped or returned these subtle gestures remains a subject of speculation. However, what is evident is that Brandon DeWilde's attempts to reach out were sincere, brave, and reflective of his complex, passionate nature. Ultimately, this concealed chapter of Brandon's life mirrors the wider challenges faced by many actors of his time, managing their aspirations within a culture of secrecy, yearning for authentic connections while under the scrutiny of a society that was not yet prepared to embrace their realities. Brandon's narrative, particularly his subtle efforts to attract and bond with Paul Newman, serves as a poignant reminder of the humanity hidden beneath the glitz and the silent struggles endured behind the scenes. On July 6, 1972, Brandon DeWilde's bright future and burgeoning career were abruptly cut short when he met with a fatal car accident in Colorado. At that time, DeWilde was in Colorado for work, having taken a role in a theatrical production of the well-known play Butterflies Are Free. The show was being showcased at the historic Elite Theater in Denver, which has a reputation for featuring a diverse array of esteemed actors and productions over the years. DeWilde, who had moved from being a child star to a serious adult performer, was striving to re-establish his presence in the live theater arena. His participation in the play was part of an ongoing effort to broaden his skills beyond film and television and to delve into the more intimate and challenging art of stage acting. While he was in the Denver area during the production, DeWilde tragically lost his life in a car accident that took place in the neighboring suburb of Lakewood, Colorado. He had been operating a camper van, a vehicle that is commonly used for practical travel arrangements during lengthy regional performances or road trips. When the incident occurred, for reasons that remain unknown, the van went off the road. It subsequently hit a guardrail before colliding with a parked truck, causing the van to roll over onto its side. The impact and position of the crash resulted in DeWilde being trapped inside the vehicle. Emergency responders arrived promptly and made efforts to free him from the wreckage. Despite their attempts to rescue him, the extent of his injuries was too severe. DeWilde was taken to St. Anthony Hospital in Denver, where medical staff worked diligently to stabilize him. However, the trauma he had sustained was extensive. Among his numerous injuries were a broken back, a fractured neck, and a shattered leg, injuries reflective of the violent nature of the accident. At 7:20 p.m. that evening, Brandon DeWilde was declared dead. He was just 30 years old, a young man in the prime of his life with the potential for his best years as a mature actor still ahead. The news of his passing stunned both fans and peers, many of whom had witnessed his evolution from a talented child star to a skilled adult performer with a unique and sensitive approach. After his premature death, Brandon DeWilde was initially interred in Hollywood, California, a place fitting for someone whose career was closely linked to the film industry. Hollywood had served as the backdrop for much of his professional journey. From his breakout role in Shane at age 11 to his performances in celebrated films and TV shows during the 1950s and 1960s, his first burial there symbolized a final tie to the industry that had both molded and honored his talents. However, at some point after his funeral, DeWilde's parents opted to relocate his remains, seeking to have their son rest nearer to their home and familial roots. They arranged for him to be reinterred at Pine Lawn Memorial Park in Farmingdale, New York. This cemetery, situated on Long Island, offered a more personal and accessible resting place for his family, enabling them to visit his grave more often and keep a lasting connection to his memory. The move reflected the profound love and ongoing sorrow of his family, who had supported his career since childhood and now wished to keep his legacy close to home. Brandon DeWilde's passing was not just a personal tragedy for his family and friends but also a cultural loss. As an artist, he displayed remarkable emotional depth and a natural ability to express vulnerability, traits that had earned him critical praise and endeared him to audiences. The incident that took his life curtailed a career that, despite being already illustrious, had the promise of even greater accomplishments. His unexpected death left behind an enduring sense of what could have been a life brimming with artistic promise and human richness, tragically cut short too soon.